Hey, welcome back to the shop. Here we are, episode 2, where we're working on the knight. So I mostly remember how I did this, is that I laid this table saw blade over at some angle, I don't remember exactly what, and then I pushed this across it at a skewed angle. So what I have to do is try and reproduce this curve under here, where it basically comes up at an angle and then curves back under. And I think if I remember correctly, the table saw blade actually came all the way back under, and then I sanded that back square to the front face. So I've got to try and recreate that angle. It could take me a few minutes. And then also I have to figure out how I'm going to do my work holding, because basically what I need to do is take a miter gauge and put it at some angle. I'm not exactly sure what that angle is. And then this has to go slide across this way. So I don't want to be holding this by hand. I want to hold this with something else. And probably what I'm going to hold it with is just a wooden clamp. So let me go get one of those and I'll figure out what I'm going to do. This miter gauge has a nice place for screws to go in on a flat piece of wood. So let me go do that off camera. You guys don't need me you guys don't need to watch me hunt for screws in my shop. Okay, I got a fence. It's just a piece of poplar. I have a lot of poplar floating around these days. If you've seen other videos of me building the wood shop, the interior is rough poplar and the exterior is all rough poplar. I had about 2,000 board feet of poplar cut over the last, a year, 2 years, and a lot of it came from right here. There was a giant tree right where literally right where this shop is, right here. This tree was, I don't know, a meter and a half, more than almost 2 meters across. It was giant poplar. So I planed the face of this with a hand plane so that it's nice and smooth. I have a nice flat and smooth surface to slide against. I've got this just screwed in with a couple of 1¼ inch screws into this 1 inch thick piece of poplar. I have a Jorgensen clamp here that I have my octagon clamped into. And I have a Jorgensen clamp here that keeps my table saw miter guide from sliding back and forth. Now I currently have this set at a 30-degree angle. I don't know that that's correct, and of course the blade's still sitting here at 90, so I need to figure out what angle I need to put it over. But that way everything's nice and rigid, it's not moving anywhere. I can still move this pretty easily, sliding it back and forth and changing the angle just by loosening this quick clamp here. So let's try and figure out what angles we're going to put this at. Now I'm going to guess at a start that I'm going to try and put that at a 45-degree angle. Pure guess. So let's loosen this up and let's see what we get when I do that. It might not be that far over. I just don't have any memory of exactly what it was we did. And of course, the further over you go with the table saw blade, the shallower the cut you're going to get. And I want a pretty shallow cut, and the depth here isn't really set. That's about 30 degrees. And that's going to need to come down now. So I'm looking at the angle here, the skew angle that I have for this piece. And so the one thing I know is that it's going to need, the whole thing's going to need to slide back toward me a little bit. Let's keep going over with that angle. All right, that's 40 degrees. So I'm at 40 over and 30 this way. What's that angle look like? I think this angle needs to be skewed a lot harder. So I'm going to need to take this quick clamp off. Now I can change the angle here. So I'm looking down the angle here and trying to remember what I had done before. And the most I can get out of this is, well, I can go all the way to 60 degrees. So go that far. Yeah, I'm just not remembering what I did. All right, let's leave that there for the moment. Definitely need less height in that cut. So the height of the cut here, I can set from this existing piece, regardless of what else I do there. So I could set him. So this is going to need to be further out this way. So I might actually have to figure out another thing to do with this. I might have to actually move this fence over further too, because I need solid backing behind this all the way out past, to have the piece go all the way out past the blade. So I'll have to move these screws and move this out a bit. That's going to change where this is. I'll be right back. All right, so I moved my fence as far out this way pretty much as I could, and I've got it nicely clamped with a big bar clamp to the thing, so that right here underneath the table saw. In fact, I had to put some wood blocks underneath the table saw so that I could put this clamp on it, nice deep pony clamp. And so here's my first test. Now, this has got approximately the right shape. It comes nice and smoothly up here, and then it starts to curve down, but it's not enough. And I was cutting it across this way, and what that tells me is I need to be at even more of an angle. This is a skew cut where I tried holding it like this, and it did what I thought it would do. It gave me a skew this way across the blade, which is not what I had in mind. So it needs to be perpendicular to the fence like this, but this fence needs to be actually closer to 90. So I'm at 45 and 60, but I need to be probably closer to about 75 or 80 degrees, almost parallel to the blade, but not quite. So that means I can't use this miter gauge this way. What I have to do is I have to not only have a clamp like this. There goes my wooden blocks. What I have to do is I have to have the miter gauge set in such a way that I'm 90 off of this. So I need another piece of wood here, 90 off of that, and then the whole thing needs to slide across at, like this much of an angle, like about there, which is more than I can get with the 60. It needs to be probably that angle. So I need to have this and a 90 to here and then slide it this way. A little bit more setup. We'll be back. All right, so the answer is it's 18 degrees off of 90, right? So it's 72 degrees is the angle that is not quite 90, it's 18 off of that, right? So it's 72 degrees is the angle. And I have a speed square sitting back here so that I know that this piece of poplar is 90 degrees to this fence that's connected to miter. So I need to attach this piece of poplar to here, and I figured that out by removing this. I haven't screwed these together yet, and sighting down here through that, and I'll get the phone out and. So there you can see the curve on the right is pretty close. We're trying to look at 90 degrees through there, and I think I've got that just right. So we're going to do a test cut on a piece of 2x4. once I get this screwed together. And then we can see about running one of the octagons. This is a dicey setup. So this is the full height of the blade where I want the final cut to be, but I'm going to start out and just barely nip it and shave it each time. You don't want a lot of side loading on your blade, but we're almost at 90 anyway, so mostly all these teeth are going to cut nice and, you know, sharp through there. We're not really pushing it into the side of the blade, although we will do that when we get to the queen, and there you really have to go slowly. And you can hear when the blade's getting stressed, and just make sure that you're going very little at a time. On this saw, this is an old Craftsman, probably 30-year-old Craftsman. I'm doing a half a turn of the depth. I have no idea what that number is, but it's very little. It's much less than the height of the carbide tooth, and these are carbide teeth, so they cut pretty nice. All right, we get this screwed together, and we'll do a test cut on the 2x4 I got sitting here. All right, so one of the things about this is I need to figure out where my hands need to be in order to be safe, and that's not here, right? So I can have my hand right up here at the top of this fence, and the other one's actually down the other end of this 2x4. And I've got this so it's just the teeth are just barely touching this, but that gives me good control. The worst case kickback is that this goes here. The one thing I will never do is stand directly behind a table saw blade. I always stand off to the side. You kind of can't see that in this camera shot because I'm trying to give you a pretty close view of what I'm doing here. We're going to raise this up very little bit at a time, do this in 6 or 8 passes. That's got it. Now it needs to be a little bit, pull the phone out again, give you a close-up. So there you can see that curve is matching very nicely. And it's a little bit long, so I need to move the whole rig that way up the miter slot so that it gets a little bit closer to the blade. So after about 2 hours of setup, maybe not quite that much, I'm finally ready to make these cuts. And again, I was having to figure out how to do this again, so it probably took me longer than this to figure it out the first time, and I had to recreate this whole setup and everything. So yeah, it took a while to figure that. And remember, I got to cut each of these on 3 faces, what's currently the bottom and one on each side of that, to get the three-sided horse cut here. All right, so I'm gonna because I want the depth to all be the same, I'm actually going to make a cut on each of the 3 faces. So I have to loosen the clamp, rotate the piece, make the next cut, and I have to do that 3 times, then raise the blade, and then make those same 3 cuts. All right, here we go. The walnut original and the new maple one. They look pretty good.
The next day.
Good morning. I had a second thought last night. I was working on the nights originally last night, and I had said, I think during the day, during that recording, that I was going to wait and try and do the scallop on that second night. Try and bring that head in later when I did the queens. And I changed my mind. I'm going to do that today. So let's get this this set up to do that operation, and I'll bring you right back here and we'll take a look at what we're doing. So these old Craftsman table saws have a security key that you can pull out of the switch. That way you can't activate the switch. I need to put the blade back at exactly 90 degrees. If you don't have one of these little digital angle finders, they're really inexpensive and they're great. I'm going to turn it around so you can see. There's a 0 on it, so put it on the table, hit 0. Double check that here. All right, and then put it on the blade. It should read 90 degrees. And if you can see that or not, it says either 90 or 89.9. I'm going to call that good enough. I just got lucky on that. I didn't have to. I just set it. It worked. Let's lock that down and double check it. Yeah, 89.9. I'm not worried about a 10th of a degree. There's just no better, faster way to set an angle like that. As I said, these are pretty inexpensive. All right, I don't need the blade that high for sure. In fact, I'm going to start with it all the way down. You know, I should check the 90 degrees on here. I have a stop on this miter gauge that's at it's at 0 degrees, but I want to double check it because I want to set it perfectly. It's out just a hair. And so I'm lining this up with the face of the blade. Almost 1 degree. May have to reset that mark on my angle on my gauge. You can. There's definitely a five cut method out there on the internet. You can find easily enough that really ensures you've got that dialed in perfectly. But certainly for what I'm doing today, I don't need it that perfect, and by eye off of a 24-inch framing square. It's good enough. Hang that back up, get him out of the way, get this angle finder out of the way. All right, now we're going to put this blade all the way down. So I'm going to set this front top edge of this right at the apex of the blade, maybe a little bit shy, and that's going to be where I want to push this across like that. Yeah, about here. So now I need to, I've got it set left and right, the angle set, which I did with the framing square. Now I need to lock this in place so that it doesn't move forward and back. And I'm going to do that with a clamp here. A quick clamp underneath. I need to put a block of wood under here so that, because there's a lip on that, and then clamp this to the table saw blade. That means that this whole thing, it can move a little bit. See if I can get that down a little tighter. That's better. The angle on this isn't very good. The jaws are, you can't see this, but the jaws are kind of skewed out this way down here, and I need to make them parallel so that this can't pivot back there. That's better. pivot. All right, it can still pivot on this, but I'm gonna be really gentle with it. Okay, so we're gonna start with this barely touching, kind of barely, not at all touching. And make sure there's no sawdust in the way, and clamp this down. Now I need to do this on both sides, so like I was having to do with the skew cut, I have to I'll have to take this out and reposition it each time. And I don't know if I really explained what I was doing there, but one of the things that I was doing, every time I re-put this back in the clamp, I would make sure that the bottom end of this was against the fence and that the clamp was right along the fence itself, so that I could hold this against the fence and know that the piece, workpiece, was parallel to the table saw table itself. Here I've got an issue where I've got a little bit of movement across across this fence, but I can hold that. My hands are nice and clear of the blade, and I can hold that here and go across and always go the same direction. So pick it up, put it back down, and go across. But I'm gonna, because I want these two faces to be the same depth, every time I raise this blade, I'm gonna have to rotate this 180 degrees and do this side and then do this side, and then you know, I'm gonna do one and the other, and then I can raise it up and do that one, and then this one, and then raise it up and do that one, and then this one. So that's what you're gonna see me do here. Put my safety key back in my switch, and here we go. Move these things out of the way, just so that my work is all clear. Okay, so I've done quite a few passes. This is pretty even. There's a little bit of a step down as the piece goes over this slight lip right here and onto my red blade guard. I can fix that with just by sanding that out. And I've got that top about where I want it, but because of the way that I'm doing the cut here, I'm actually further toward me than I want to be. I actually want to be up here a little bit, and to do that I'm going to have to move this rig, release this clamp and move him up just a little bit, and I'm going to do that. And rather than move the blade, I'm going to leave the blade at the height it is now, because that's about the face that I want on this top edge. So I'm just going to move that a little bit, and I don't know if you can see the shavings I'm getting here. It's shaving off nice big pieces. I'm not just getting sawdust off of this shaving. So one of the concerns about doing this is what they call side loading the blade. You don't want to push against the edge of the blade. Because these are carbide teeth, I got a lot of cutting surface here, and so I'm not really worried too much about side loading the blade in that regard. But I am going to have to be careful about how this is kind of bumped up and over this thing. So I'm actually going to try and hold, you know, I'm keeping my fingers away from the blade, of course, but I'm going to try and hold my thumbs against the top edge of this fence and try and keep this more even, and just give me less sanding to do later. That's got more of a horse head shape, I think. I like that, and the fact that you did all those interesting curves with the table saw is one of the things that intrigued me about doing this piece this way. Got a lot of sanding to do though. Let's get at it. All right, so I have a couple of different kinds of sanding to do, and so I have a couple of different sanding sticks. I have the flat one that I made before, and that's going to be good for some of these flat areas in here on these pieces. But I got a lot of curves, and so some of the curves are really small, and so I just have a couple of different size dowels, and I have one really big one. That's going to allow me to do this outside curve. It's not going to be very useful on the interface here, of course. I'm happy with the way that a little experiment came out. Let's put him over here and give myself a little more elbow room. That other walnut octagon over here. All right. So yeah, I like that. I like that better than the old one. So here we can compare him to. One of the other maple ones. But I will put a 45 chamfer on here, just like is on the top of this edge here, and on these faces as well. But I'll do that kind of after the fact. All right, so I'm gonna do a little sanding here, and then I'll bring you back, and I can also show you the the sanding that I did on the rook. This ended up being really nice. This is still just 100 grit. I haven't really, this should be pretty well in focus. I haven't really done anything beyond the 100 grit, but I did get pretty much all of the saw marks out. All right, so we're gonna do do some rough sanding here. And I'll just show you some real quick techniques on doing some of this. We'll do this outside face first, because I really want to get an idea of kind of what that really looks like. I'm just going to wrap this all the way around this, and give me a nice way to hold it. I'm going to put this flat on the table. It's working good. But the curve is keeping me from getting any hard edges here. Of course, I'm going across the grain, but this grain kind of curves in this way. Yeah, that's coming out pretty good already. This face has got a little bit more saw mark on it. A spindle sander would work good here. I don't happen to own one, but that would be a great thing to do here. I'm just kind of doing the same thing as you'd do on a spindle sander. I'm just doing it by hand. Yeah, that won't take long to be pretty nice. So, yeah, it doesn't take long to do that. The one thing I will do, here, let me zoom back in and show you. The one thing I want to do in order to make these really look nice is to make sure that this bottom edge all the way around is even, and right now it's not. It's a little bit higher right here than it is over here. I matched this curve pretty well to that, but I'm going to have to sand these down a little bit in order to make that line nice and clean all the way across. That won't take much. They're only a 16th millimeter out, something like that. But that face came out really nice, right? I mean, it came out really pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna get on with it, and maybe I'll bring you back for another look once I do a little bit more of this. So here's one little thing I found that you absolutely have to be very careful of while you're using this slightly smaller round dowel, is that you can't sand and have the dowel go up and down. You got to have a really straight line, because you want this crease right here, this corner right here, to be nice and sharp. You don't want it to have any roundedness to it. And so I'm having to be very careful, and also try and make them very even so that they look the same on both faces. Can't go too much one way or the other. You've got to kind of keep it even. Obviously, I put this back in clamp to give me some better work holding. Right now, I'm not bothering to change the piece's position in the clamp. So I'm trying to keep a nice crisp line on there. Obviously, with 100 grit, I'm mostly forming at this point and getting rid of saw marks. I'm not trying to do any finishing or polishing. Let's see if I can show this. The one thing I'm having an issue with on this piece, zoom in and enhance. No, I can't enhance. I can zoom in. Hopefully you can see this. There's a little bit of this corner right here is not super sharp. There's some places where there's a little bit of dig in it, and it's kind of rounded over. So I'm having to try and make sure that when I sand this, like I said, you can't have the sanding go up and down. You got to try and keep it really parallel to the face so that you're not rounding over this edge. Okay, so after about another 45 minutes of sanding, my hands are getting really tired, but that's what this takes. I finally have a pretty nice even line all the way around here. All right, and the curves on the back are pretty even. I was chasing at one point right in here. There was a crack that I thought was a saw blade cut, and I was chasing it, and turns out it's just a crack in the wood. So the problem was then I sanded a little too much, and now I had to sand this side in order to match the curve across the back. That looks pretty good now. I did run the flat faces on a piece of sandpaper, just so I could get an idea of what it looked like, and I did run some chamfers across all the way around here and all the way around this face of the horse's nose, I suppose. It's still pretty stylized. I thought about cutting off a 45, maybe about here, across the back. I'm going to leave it. I thought about doing that. It would give the horse's head a little more, horse head shape, but it's pretty stylized as it is, so I'm really just going to leave it. So anyway, so that's where we're going to leave the night. I like it. I like this curve. I like this curve a lot. I'm really glad I did that. So now I've got the knight and a rook. Keep following along. We're going to do the bishop next. The bishop is real simple. He's just some very shallow cuts on these two faces, on the front and on the back. Maybe like to do a little bit different sculpting, but I'm not going to try and redesign this. It's just, I'd have to do a really significant redesign, and then to have a whole chest set, I'd have to cut all the pieces. I may actually go back and make all four knights. I like this so much better than the original that I might actually go back and do that. But sanding's a lot of work, so I need to think about whether or not I'm going to do that or not. And certainly, I haven't sanded this one at all. He's the one without the scallop sides. and he would just be a reproduction of this. But I don't really need to remake remake the knights. This was a test just to show you guys how to do it, and this was a test for me because I thought of doing that scallop. So along next week we'll do the bishop. Thanks a lot. Do the like and subscribe thing and all that stuff. I really appreciate people following along. The channel's growing just a little bit, and that's always nice to see. So thanks, and get out in your shop and make some sawdust, and thanks for following along. We'll see you next week.